podcast. I'm Jason Mackey alongside Michael McKenry, and this is for the first time in recorded history, pitching in. Maybe Fort will just do a different name every week until we run out of them. I don't know, but we went with the Mackey approved one. This one, we'll see how it resonates with people. How are you?
I'm doing well. Yeah, I feel like pitching in can work. I feel like you got to pitch in to open up that outsider part of the plate and make things work. So maybe, just maybe, that'll work. And you've seen I've been playing around with logos. I've been trying to figure it out. And you mentioned something. It says kind of looks like itching a little, and I was like, golly, it really does. Got to get that to go away. So yeah, we're having some fun with it, and I'm really excited about where this could go today.
We don't want it to be itching in. That's the goal of this podcast, to have no itching whatsoever. And we don't want you to start itching while watching this podcast or listening to this podcast. We don't want to be itching while delivering this podcast. So anyway, we have a lot of stuff to get to, including me. I think I'm allergic to Florida, Ford. I think that's what's going on here. That's all I can come up with. Like, it's not a cold. It's nothing else. Like, it's just this weird cough that ever since I've got to Florida, I've had, and it will like randomly show up at stupid times, and now is one of them. So I never thought I was allergic to Florida before, but now I am.
Anyway, I don't think it's Florida. I think it's the drive down. I think you're still recovering. Your soul was so hurt last week talking about that drive, that 16-hour push that you had, and 3 hours in, you're whining like a little baby. I think your throat's hurt, and maybe you screamed a little bit. I've done that in the car before. I think you're just trying to get past that. That's what it is.
My pride is hurt. It's coming out in the form of my throat, because I felt like such a goober. I'm sitting here with you complaining about my drive and my 18 hours or whatever it is. You're like, yeah, we drove 36 hours, cross country with all this stuff packed in a Toyota Tacoma or something. I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna shut up now. Anyway,
I love it.
But you and I also, and I want to tie up a loose end. This is not current, but this needs addressed, because the night of our first podcast, I think it was that night, we started texting about this. You took your wife, the person in that Toyota Tacoma with you, driving for 36 hours or 72 hours or whatever it was, on Valentine's Day to Waffle House. Why?
She made the reservations. She made the reservations. Yes. I mean, you can't ask for a better wife than the one that will say, hey, why don't we go to Waffle House on Valentine's Day? We've always wanted to do it. Let's go do it. And sure enough, went to Waffle House. Hey, Mackey, had a blast. They had cupcakes, cookies. They had all this stuff. They had places where you could take pictures. I mean, they just went full throttle for Valentine's Day. Decorated it. They gave us sparkling grape white juice. I'm not really sure how to explain it any other way. But yeah, the Waffle House lady was on top of things. I got birch chili on top of my hash browns. I smothered them. I covered them. I topped them. It was outstanding. Recommend it to anybody. The Washington, PA Waffle House. They do it right. They're great people. And man, we had an absolute blast.
So why did she want to go to Waffle House on Valentine's Day? Just the sheer irony of it?
I think the reality of it is like we've always tried to make it a staple to date. That's one thing her dad told us when we first decided to get married. He passed away right before the wedding, and he said, don't ever forget to date. Don't ever forget to just enjoy time with each other. So we try to just have fun consistently. And a lot of times with life, it doesn't happen that way. Life's been really hard at times over the last 4 or 5 years. So we had a little fun. And we had a blast. We really did. It was just a great time. We met great people. That's awesome. It was like a community. I know you've probably been to a Waffle House. It's like everybody all of a sudden knows everybody. Like, there's Larry, my uncle, and there's Tim over there. He's my distant cousin. You're not related, but that's kind of what it feels like at Waffle House.
Uncle Larry, isn't that a Kutch character?
It is. I wonder if he'll bring that out at all.
I don't know. I hope so, though.
I feel like he should be a motivational speaker at some point.
Uncle Larry?
Uncle Larry, absolutely.
Okay. I've actually never been to a Waffle House, not to go too far down
It's on me.
Rabbit hole. Okay.
It's on me. If you want to go to Florida when I come, I'll be there the 13th, 14th. Yeah.
There's one a mile away from my place.
Done.
I drive past it every morning going to Pirate City, and I have nothing against it. I've just never been, and I love a good breakfast too. So it is very
on your bucket list. It should be on your bucket list.
Yeah, my bucket list.
Yeah, I mean that's something you have to do in life.
It kind of is. Kind of is. I mean, I don't know. There are probably more profound things than Waffle House, but is
Maybe
it
a couple.
the Waffle House or just Waffle House?
I think you have to put a "the" in front of it, even if it isn't there. It's like the Ohio State, right? It has to be there. You have to make sure that you give it everything it deserves.
All right. So actual baseball talk now. This is something I was excited to get into with you, and I was actually texting you about this. I think that you have a better lens on this than anybody I know. So it relates to a story I did with Austin Hedges this week, talking about his process of learning a pitching staff. I was a pitcher. I wanted to be a catcher. I had a pretty good idea of the dynamic that existed. Obviously not at the level of you or Austin or anybody else, but I think this is one of those areas for it where fans don't necessarily understand. And I don't say that to be like talking over people or acting like stuff is so complicated, but I want you to describe how you went about creating a relationship with the pitcher and getting him to trust you and learning his stuff and all that. But that is an important dynamic of baseball, is it not? Like that is something I would imagine as a catcher, you put a lot of stock into.
And Mackey, you said something, you said you wanted to be a catcher. I'd love to know why you didn't end up being a catcher and you ended up pitching, but I think that's the first step. You have to want to be back there. And as you get older, that role and that reality changes. At first, it's just, can you stand the heat? Can you stand being back there? And can you stand, honestly, just getting beat up because you don't really know where the ball is going? As you progress in your career, you become an extension of that coaching staff. So I always talk about being off the field of play. I'm literally not in play, the only guy out there. I'm the closest to the bench, and I'm really just trying to navigate everything. One of my mentors, Jerry Weinstein, talks about trying to be a field facilitator. So even before I even think about what's going on between that 60 feet, 6 inches, I'm facilitating what's going on because I'm the general on the field. So I'm looking at, is my shortstop in the right position? Is he calling out to the left fielder and maybe the center fielder, moving them, especially in the minor leagues before we got coaches kind of giving us the wave and all those different things like they're landing an airplane. It's really changed how kind of everything goes, in unison. And it's been fun to see that. But once you get to the minor leagues, for me, it was college. My coach said, it's your pitching staff. And that meant something to me. I didn't really understand, in high school, my coach taught us how to call a game, but he allowed us to, just go out there and just play it and not have to think too much. And then in college, it was completely different. It's like, you figure it out. But when I got it wrong, I kind of got pushback. And then I learned I have to have a reason why every time. I can't just go with this guy. I have to have a reason why. Can I win today? And that's kind of my philosophy going through the minor leagues is every single day I would try to sit next to the pitching coach. If I wasn't playing, I would communicate with him before, during, and after. And I'd also talk to the manager. And then as I got older, I started talking to the hitting coach and tried to see it from their perspective. And then I started talking to other teams, other players, and learning from them, all while I'm trying to learn the guy 60 feet, 6 inches away. Yeah. And all that is based around a philosophy. So I'm trying to learn as much as I can about the game, about how to win that game, and use anything at my disposal to maybe create a little bit of advantage. But the reality of it is it didn't matter. None of that mattered except the personality on the mound. And I think that's something Hedges has done a great job of. And I heard him talk about it early on, is before he could even understand the human being, he's watching film. He's digging in, watching pitch movement. How do they miss? When they had that bad game, what was the problem? And then he can go back and talk to them about those games, watch those games with them, see the reaction. A lot of times a guy will tell you a lot immediately when you go back and say, hey, Will Crow, when you threw that slider and you hung it, why didn't you go to your changeup? It ended up being a grand slam right there. The changeup was maybe the pitch you should have thrown, and you just see the head drop, and you kind of understand how much he cares, how much he's really relived that. And then you can just kind of play off that and understand that personality. But when you really can get them to open up to you and listen and ask questions and be a little bit vulnerable, there is no place you can't go. It doesn't matter the ability on the mound. It matters about how much they trust you in those really tough times. Because Mackey, at every level, you probably have your best stuff, 10, 20% of the time. Most of the time you're going out there and you're going to compete. Well, when you're competing, you don't want to be trying to figure out what to throw as a pitcher. You want to just be like, all right, let's go, Mac. I'm ready. I'm going to throw whatever you put down. I'm going to figure it out with you. I'm going to over exaggerate this pitch because you have just hammered that into my mind in the bullpen. So there's so much that goes into it. And I think every guy's a little bit different. Some guys you can go to dinner with, some guys you just go out and watch their bullpen, other guys you need to catch their bullpen, but you just need to show how much you care. And the biggest thing is be a servant first. Serve, love, and care for these guys. And honestly, everything else will fall into place.
Yeah. And it's not any different than everyday life. Honestly, like you're just trying to learn personalities. And, as a catcher, and I will get into the story on why I wanted to catch and why I didn't catch and all that stuff. But I mean, you're going to have a pitcher, and I guarantee Austin Hedges has this, that doesn't really need anything from him. Like, it's automation. He wants this here. It's not going to change. Okay, Austin Hedges is going to do this, catch it, throw the ball back. There's going to be other guys where he's got to be talking to him constantly and explaining, this is what we want. This is the sequence here. Okay. He's going to want, nope. This is the time where he's not shaking me. I know him better than him. And I don't know. That's why this is fascinating to me, because in a lot of ways, there's not a way to jumpstart this or make it go faster. It is organic. It is, you do things like watching film or talking to coaches or talking to guys or catching bullpens or whatever, and you may or may not do it right. And somebody with a great lens on this, or whatever you want to say, someone with experience doing it can do it well, can bring this out quicker. And to me, that's a benefit of the Pirates and why you sign a guy like Austin Hedges, because he can do this. He's done it before. You don't want to get into July and have him still somehow be learning a pitching staff.
And two, you think about all the information available, right? And every single organization thinks that they're holding the key to the kingdom. They really do. And the reality of it is they all have the same information.
No matter the sport either.
No matter the sport. The Lakers believe that, if they shoot more threes that they're going to win, period. And if LeBron's bringing up the ball, they're going to win. And the reality of it is everybody in the league says the same thing about the Lakers. It's just how they quantify it and how they can maybe sift through it and get the best nuggets for their guys. And I feel like guys like Austin Hedges and Rich Hill and those guys that are willing to put back into their teammates because maybe they received it, maybe they had some tough times, whatever have you, it doesn't really matter. It's the fact that they can figure out what's the best for that guy on that given day with no ego, with nothing really in mind other than I just want to be on a team that cares for each other and wants to win and has that solid foundation of that singular goal. And I feel like Hedges being able to, catch an array of different guys playing in different places. He understands different philosophies. He's seen it in different ways, and he can kind of say, hey, this is how we did it in Cleveland. Hey, this is how we did it here. And it really starts to come together
in Cleveland.
Exactly. And I think he brings it together into understanding who's the guy in front of me. What can he handle? Because they all get a pitching card, says, this is how you got to get this guy out. This is who you match up well against. This is who you don't match up well against. But then how do you present that properly? And I use the example of Jeff Locke. It was one of my favorites. Me and Russell Martin drew out a grid, and every single day we made him circle where each pitch was going to go. He ended up not liking the circles much, so I would end up circling and doing all that, and he would write out every single day how he wanted to get guys out, first pitch, and then really just the two-strike approach, and then where he wanted to dominate the zone. About All-Star break, when he made the All-Star team, he goes, Mac, I can't do this anymore. And I was like, what? He goes, I write the same thing every single day. I said, you just created an identity. Now you can go out with no information and know what your best stuff is and how you want to attack a righty and a lefty. We can build from there. So now no matter what, if you know nothing, back in high school, this is how you're going to attack. You've created your identity. Now we go from there. Now we learn how to bring you back, how we compete. Maybe it's in between innings. Maybe it's right in the middle of the inning. We have to sacrifice the guy in front. I'll worry about who's hot, who's not. You worry about where you want to miss your pitches, not where you want to throw them, because one of the biggest things, the biggest problem, especially in Colorado, that I had was getting guys to understand, be more aggressive. Guys were tentative, be more aggressive. So if you want to go low, go lower than low. If you want to go high, go higher than high, because then you have that atmosphere that's actually going to play for you. And we ended up playing Mike Trout a couple different times in 14 and 15. He never got a hit. And our whole thought was let's go lower than low. This guy absolutely destroys the ball down for a righty, destroys it. So we went below the zone constantly.
Really?
And when he started to try to go there, boom, we went up top. Yeah, because everybody was going up top. And you try to get there and you don't get there. You go too high. You end up walking in. You're like, man, I know if I get right here, and they just miss. Because trying to be perfect. I feel like that's what happened to Judge last year. Constantly. Guys trying to be too perfect. I'm like, the dude is Paul Bunyan. Go higher than high and lower than low and see what happens. But then you can work from there. So you understand this is where I want to quantify my miss. So I'm aggressive through that. So you just try to learn guys and help them navigate, whether it's a bullpen, whether it's side session. I've been a therapist. And that's one of the biggest things I would say as a catcher. You just let guys come and just pour into you. Like, yeah, okay, well, what did you feel there? Why did you feel that? Why are you terrified at the ball coming back at you? You need to walk through that because that sounds like it may be a psychological thing. There's just so much. And I think Hedges, from everything I can see, everything I've heard, and the rumors about him, is he just takes it to a whole nother level. He just puts his arm around guys and he deeply explains what he's trying to say. So they understand. If they don't, he won't leave. And I think that's outstanding.
Yeah. The parts we've seen in the clubhouse so far have been just immaculate. Like
that's
he's
awesome.
Always talking, always going with somebody. Was talking to Henry for a long, long time the other day.
And that value in itself. Is
no doubt.
You can't make up for experience.
Yep. 100%. But you can track Austin Hedges by what you hear. When he's in the clubhouse. And I don't mean that like in an obnoxious way. It's just generally like he's dispelling information to somebody. Okay, I want to get to a couple more baseball related things, but I will tell the story about how I became a catcher or whatever. So I'm 6'4". You know this, and anybody who hasn't seen me in person may not be aware that I'm fairly tall. So growing up, I was usually put, I don't know, first base. I played some third, played some shortstop. I always pitched. Was generally a pretty decent pitcher, but I was always told, you're too tall to catch. You're too tall to catch. You're too tall to catch. We had a catcher who's a year older than me in high school, and he generally caught. My senior year, I only pitched and caught. I got to catch a little bit. And then I went to college as theoretically a pitcher. Although I hit a decent amount, you've probably seen the thing on Twitter joking with Neil Walker. We both hit 600, but like I could hit a little bit. I could hit enough for my level, Division III Westminster. But so we're playing fall ball. And this is my freshman year. And so I'm not getting in. There's older players. I'm not getting in the lineup. Well, they need somebody to pitch. I'm like, all right, well, screw it. I'll go in, I'll pitch. And I threw pretty well. I think it was just an inning or two or something like that. But then like that sort of put me on the coach's radar as a pitcher. Well, I continued to pitch. And I was a reliever. I pitched 20 some games each sophomore, junior, senior year. And I mean, this isn't Division I ball. Like I think we played like 40, 45 games, something like that. But anyway, I just kept pitching. But all through college, my coach, I would sort of try to weasel my way into like hitting. Let me catch. And I never got anywhere. Almost did my senior year. But then there was a situation. I remember he had me throw a bullpen or something like late and ramp up to it. And I threw really well again. And he's like, yeah, you're not catching. You're going to, you're going to pitch. And that was really good. And I'm like, son of a, I should have dogged it. So anyway, pitched my senior year and the story's almost over, I swear. So we don't make the playoffs and there's like 3 games at the end of the year. And our coach says, do you want to pitch for like the last 3 or would you rather catch? I said, rather catch. Absolutely. Put me behind the plate. I don't care about pitch. So they put me behind the plate and I caught 3 games, threw out a couple guys, hit a home run, went 4 for 10. It was the most fun I ever had playing college ball. And that was it. That was just how my career ended. I called 3 decent games. I felt like caught my best friend on the team as a pitcher through a 9-inning complete game shutout to end.
Come on, Mackey.
Career. I love it, brother. It was a great time.
And you can be 6'4" and catch. I mean, Wieters, Mauer, there's a lot of them.
I know.
I mean, one of my favorites, Javi Lopez, when I was growing up.
Honest to God, man, I was a better catcher than I was anything else. And I probably technically wasn't very good because of the size of my limbs. And I was never really taught like proper blocking technique, but I could stop balls. I could glove them. I could get in front of them. I could throw. I could think. And like, one of the things I love so much about baseball was you're back there and you've got an idea of who's hot, who does what, who hits what well, who doesn't hit what well. And that, but I mean, it doesn't matter, right? I mean, it matters, but it doesn't matter. You're watching a guy swing. You're watching how he reacts to a curveball. You're watching how he reacts to a fastball, what the count is, what the pitcher has that day. You're like balancing all this information. And then you're thinking, okay, this is my pitch and my spot. This is where I'm trying to get to. And then how do I set that up based on what my pitcher has? What a good sequence is? Where's my defense playing? Where would I like this guy to hit the ball? What's the best outcome for my team? Like, I don't know. There's just so much like, thought that goes into what you're doing on every single pitch. I love that. I absolutely loved it. I still love it.
I literally want to run through the screen right now. You got me so fired up. I got two things before we move on to the next thing. Is one, my last year playing, I was pretty much, they called me grandpa. I was on the Mickey Mouse Club in Durham in North Carolina, and I just wanted to play. So I played a lot of outfield, but there was this like common joke going around the clubhouse is anytime they needed anything, like somebody got called up and like, hey, you may have to throw today. Hey, Mac, can you throw? I'm like, funny thing is, that's my best position. I said it all year long. So I ended up playing
for like every position
he would even bring up. And he'd be like, hey, Mac. I'm like, it's my best position every time. I had a coach tell me that one time. He was like, yeah, whenever they ask, just say, you know what? That's my best position. So I got to play second, third. I didn't get to play short, but I played all over the diamond. It was an absolute blast. And it became a running joke. And I thought it was outstanding. And then the other thing I was going to say is you were talking about all that stuff about situational baseball, understanding, how pitches are set up. And one thing that I try to tell pitchers all the time is whatever you threw last sets up the next pitch.
Yep.
So if I'm hitting, I don't know if you threw one at my face and you're trying to go down below, that still plays. Mm-hmm. And then something I was talking to Kutch about before we went down to spring training was how I got him out. And I didn't worry about the pitches. I would make sure my pitcher would mess his timing up. So I knew he wanted to be comfortable and he keeps a rhythm with his hands. If I could get him stuck, so coming set and holding, and he's stuck, boom, and then quick pitch the next time, I knew I could get him. Same way with Stanton. So there's all these mind games. So I had different signs for different guys. Some guys I'd be like, I just hold my glove before I do the actual, signs. Some guys I would actually
just take a while, you mean?
Yeah, just take a while. And then some guys I would actually, most of the time I would tell guys where they could hold on players. And then I'd also say, hey, a great time here is pick over twice and then let's pitch to him. Let's see if we can get him frustrated and get him out of whack. And because there is a mind game to that. They're already talking about, if you saw the Tennessee game recently, the guy couldn't call timeout, ended up walking, went nuts. And that's a great psychological move for your pitcher. Let the thing run all the way down. You're set. You're not going to get in trouble and get him stuck, especially if he doesn't have a timeout left, because that's how you're going to combat some of these things and understand how far you can go. But man, if you get in someone's head, it's so hard. Once you're swimming like Michael Phelps, backstroke in your head, you got no shot. I mean, it's so true because that tension will get you every time.
Where do you come down on the pitch clock stuff? Are you for or against it?
I hate the ball strike thing. Other than that, I'm for it. I do not think they need to affect the game, especially early on.
How else do you enforce it?
Money. Yeah. I think, and I think it's a set fee, whatever it is, you get a warning and money. That's how they did the staying in the box early on. I was in the major leagues when they implemented that and it was kind of smooth, but there were some veteran guys that paid $100,000 day one and said, I'm going to mess this up all year. I'm not changing my routine. This is year 9 for me. And I respected that too. And I don't want to see Scherzer rush. I don't want to see Verlander rush. And whether that's right, wrong, or indifferent, they're the best in the game and they've been doing it for so long. I don't want to affect anything they're doing. So if they want to pay a fee and they're going to mess up, they may be just fine with it. but I think there should be some grace. And the only game I got thrown out of in my entire career was my last year in 17. I got thrown out for this exact thing. The pitcher wasn't on the rubber. I'm holding my hand up for time. I get called a strike. Ended up striking out that at bat while I'm facing one of the best pitchers in the entire league. Giving him a strike was literally like just taking my bat and handing me a newspaper. Good luck.
Hey.
Yeah. I mean, that's the reality.
Like it's a bad thing.
Have you ever tried to hit a baseball with the newspaper? Doesn't work very well. And I got thrown out of that game. I didn't say anything wrong. It's just that I tried to hand the umpire my bat and said, hey, if you wanted this so bad, I would have given it to you before they bat. And I got thrown out of the game. And then we talked later on. He apologized. He's like, I was wrong. I messed up. He wasn't ready. And I was in the box. So it's just a little skewed for me. Give it some time. I think that could work later on, but I'd never had that rule. And that was August. It wasn't like April for me. It was August, but it had too much power and authority for that umpire who already has way too much on his plate. And he's trying to keep his job and not bring in the automated strike zone. So I just think it's a little much. I would enforce it with money. Everything else I'm fine with. I don't understand how they want to do the 15, 20, 30 hut, whatever that's going on. I mean, that's a little much for me. Like, try to keep it simpler. I think they try so hard to make these things so complicated sometimes. Yeah. What about you?
I like it. I like it from a you need to speed the game up perspective, which is not going to be a popular opinion among players. I understand that. But coming at this from a media perspective and covering other sports and looking at, like, to me, baseball should be more popular than it is. I think it's the greatest game on earth. I think it has the best personalities, the best strategy, the best gameplay. Hardcore baseball people are going to say, I'm fine watching a 2-1 game that lasts 3.5 hours, 3 hours and 45 minutes. And that's great. I'm happy for them. But I don't think the majority of the public is. They need to find a way to tamp down game times I'm probably preaching to the choir or saying the obvious or whatever, but like, I'm okay with it. I don't think baseball players are the first people in the world who are going to be forced to make a decision quicker than they would like to make that decision. I respect that they've done things for a long, long time, and Max Scherzer is really good at what he does and all of the stuff you said. But there comes a time where we need to step back and look at this sport and how much does it resonate with mainstream America versus is it being passed by the NFL? Yes, it has been. And I don't know if you're catching the NFL. Has it been passed by the NBA? Yes. I'd hope maybe it is. I mean, it should be. Like, it should be. Major League Baseball, to me, in America, should be second only to football, and it should be a lot closer than it is. To me, if you put some of the amazing athletes on the field, feature them, get them into all kinds of cities. I like what they've done with the schedule, but speed some of this stuff along. We can disagree on like how to enforce the rules. I don't particularly have a problem with it, but I do sort of, I was talking to a player in the clubhouse this morning about this. Like, I do see it rubbing some people the wrong way, especially if they're going to be, if they come out guns a-blazing on this thing and just start calling strikes and balls and let's go. And they are going to have to extend a little bit of grace.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing is you can make the rule changes. You can do different things. It's just all at once. All the stuff they're doing all at once is a lot. And then two, you can't change anything until you change the dynamic between the MLB and the players. You're right. The thing that NFL does and NBA do way better is they promote the players. They brand the players. The marketing is off the charts, right? I don't see Peyton and Eli.
So adversarial in baseball.
Correct. It's too much of a fight. Yeah. And I think if each city tried to grab a hold of that individually, I think it'd really help. And I know the Pirates are trying to do some things different, hiring new marketing people, new branding people, and they're trying to figure out ways to get back into the community more in the sense of like, how can we make sure that we're not forcing this guy in the community, that he actually thrives in the community because it's what he wants and who he is. And I think that's Andrew McCutchen to a T. He did a lot of the things outside the realm of the Pirates to build his own brand. He had great people around him to be able to do that. And I think if you did that in a collective manner, depending on the guy. Like Bednar's going to get in the community. He loves this place. He's from here. Utilize that, right? Neil Walker, same way. Me, same way. Like I wanted to be out. I wanted to give back as much as I could because those are the people supporting me. And I think using those players, but also finding the dynamic of how can we get Key Bryant out there? How can we get Brian Reynolds out there to make them thrive? Not the Pirates, make them thrive. If they thrive, everybody else is going to thrive. And I think that's the biggest thing, but there's just so much dog and pony, and there's so much punching and kicking and fighting all the time between the two that they can't see that one of the biggest problems is, how they need to represent each other on a consistent basis.
Well, yeah, and how you work together on things.
Amen.
Like this. Like, I would hope that the players have it explained to them if the league sits down and says, like, look, this is what we're up against. This is what we're trying to do. Like, we're not sitting here saying, how can we make you as mad as possible? How can we screw you over? That's not our goal. We want to grow this game just like you want to grow the game. Here's why. Here's the metrics. Here's people that are tuning out. And frankly, look at our television ratings. Like, they're not as good as they should be. They really aren't. And here's why. And we need to change it. And you need to speed up the product. I wouldn't expect everybody to agree with that. But I think some people would realize, like, okay, this is why we're doing it. This is what we're doing it for. We're going to get down with it. I don't know if that line of communication was open and there was more trust. And then, of course, if you weren't throwing a whole bunch of stuff at players at the same time, that might be better. But you know what? The counter argument to that, Fort, I would look at it. If I'm a player and MLB is doing, the pitch clock this year, and then the bases, and then the shift, and then we're going to ABS, I'd be like, every year it's something. Give me a break. There's not really a way to win this.
Then it was the ball and the tack, and it's just stacking things up instead of being transparent, right? Instead of saying, hey, we're going to get rid of this tack. This is what we're concerned about. This bottle here, the sunscreen, the water and the rosin, everything else, where you're kind of just throwing it out there and nobody really even knows what's sticky, what's not, because I can take, rosin and water and hold a ball for about a minute and a half without it moving. So does that count? I mean, that's two things that I'm going to use every single day. I'm going to drink water and I'm going to use rosin. So there's a problem there. Like I used to do my glove and I almost got in trouble in a game with shaving cream. Well, when I wipe it off, it has some tack and it got stuck in my glove in the first inning. And I'll never forget. I don't remember if it was Laz Diaz or who it was. They're like, Mac, like, no, you're not. No. Seriously, give it a little bit as it warms up. It'll stop. I promise. I don't know why it's sticky today comparative to other days. I guess because of where I kept my glove and the humidity. I mean, I wasn't trying to do anything.
What would you do? Shaving cream and then in the oven?
I would just do shaving cream and off. And it smelled outstanding. Little aloe too. Absolutely awesome. And it was almost like I was taking my glove to the barber shop, right? I'd talk to it, put on the shaving cream, wipe it off, and then let it sit. It just kept that leather so soft. I mean, it was just outstanding. I didn't like the oils. It made it heavy and it made it slick. So you ended up having to combat that. A lot of guys would use all types of things to combat that oil. So I used, shaving cream, and I got it from Ryan Doman. And he had a glove. Yeah, he had a glove that was like 48 years old and he was like 29. So it's like, maybe I'll do that too, because that glove looks like it's brand new. So I think just the balance and the transparency of like, what are we trying to do? Why are we trying to do it? Because you think about speeding up the game and then they take away the shift. That's more hits. They add a bigger base. That's technically they're thinking more stills, more running, more action. Then they ban the shift. It's just like you're playing for a tie at the end of this game when you could just say, all right, we're going to do this, kind of see how it is. And they use the minor leagues as the test model. It's like you didn't implement all of them at the same time into a league that has a broadcast that goes national or regional, that they're going to have to rush through the innings, in between innings. They're already talking about that and all the broadcast stuff. So it's a lot to take in, and you have to figure it out in 6 weeks. Good luck. And that's literally my only problem, because I think these guys are professional athletes. They get paid a ton of money. They'll figure it out and they'll adapt. But if it does affect their game, I remember when they did the new helmets in the minor leagues, when I went back down, my bat hit the helmet, like just where I naturally put my hands.
Yeah.
That's a problem. You know what I mean? That's a problem, especially like I just got hurt. I'm trying to fight my way back to the big leagues. So I had to like figure out the rhythm I would create to get my hands away from my big juggernaut helmet that they put on. It looked like a bobblehead.
You look like a Lane Bennis.
I did. I look like the guy from Spaceballs.
Oh, that's
yeah, the big old helmet.
Dark helmet.
So I could go on all day about it. And at the end of the day, as long as these guys can go out and compete and we're seeing competitive baseball, I think good things will happen. I really do. And I just pray that the MLB, MLBPA, and that all kind of gets ironed out and they start really trying to figure out the best things for the fans, because that's really all that matters.
What's a better Mel Brooks movie? Spaceballs or Robin Hood Men in Tights?
Oh, man. I'm going to have to go Robin Hood Men in Tights.
I might go that too. That's a tough one.
It is a tough one.
Really
it's
tough.
A good one.
My wife would be so angry at me if I didn't go with Spaceballs, but I don't know. Partial to Men in Tights. I'm on the East Bank. I'm on the West Bank. Not exactly the Mississippi. Tremendous.
So good.
And Ford, I also meant to ask you, did you ever see the story? A writer who's actually a friend of mine named James Wagner for the New York Times did it about why baseball players wear cologne.
No, but I would love to hear it. I never understood it.
It's like a psychological thing about feeling like you're, spiffed up or going somewhere, like this formality thing, and have like a bit of flavor to you. And I think he like even talked to like some scent experts and maybe a doctor. So you were never a cologne guy?
No, I never thought about it. I think I was just too rough around the edges.
Yeah.
I was just ready to go. I would shower before every game, but that was a feel-good thing.
Yeah.
I do think that essential oils and stuff guys use a lot over the last couple of years. Same concept. They don't talk about it a lot because I don't think they want to. But yeah, I know a lot of guys are starting to get into holistics and the way their brain's wired behind smell and different things.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of interesting to me.
An epic fail reporting story from my side of the aisle. Last year, I started doing this and it just got too awkward because the question just can't be framed in a good way. I wanted to do a story about guys showering, about Major League Baseball players and why they shower so much and what sort of like quirks, why you do it. Do you have any habits when you shower? Like, and it just got a little bit, I didn't feel comfortable asking the question. And they're like, Cole Tucker, God bless him, was great. Will Crow, God bless him, was great. They got the concept of it. But I also got some really weird looks from guys saying like, what the heck are you asking me? What are you doing? But I'm just trying to act like you said, it was a feel thing. It was a comfort thing. I remember Tucker was saying it was something that he got from Jordy Mercer, that like Jordy would always shower before he played. They were funny about it, saying like, I couldn't play a game without taking a shower. And like, that's a weird psychological thing. Like that's not totally normal. But I was never able to get at the root of my shower story. I let it die.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I used to dunk in the cold tub, like full submerged before every game.
Oh, you go all the way. Okay.
Yeah. Like
I thought you meant like you had a little play basketball hoop.
Oh yeah, I definitely. That was in Roach's office. We used to absolutely play horse in there, and I would try to dunk because I couldn't dunk anywhere else. But a lot of us would do, hot cold therapy and different things. And before cold plunging became a trend across all social medias and everything else, I used to always dunk. I just felt heightened. I didn't know that's what it was actually doing.
How long would you go down for?
I would go down as long as I could. I was a wimp most of the time, but I got better and better as I did it. And, I got that from guys like Daniel McCutcheon and guys that I saw do it early on in my career. And I was like, that's a brilliant idea. I used to do it for my legs, but maybe I'll do this. So I did it before and after games.
Just kind of like, I don't know, zap you or something. I'm trying to picture what that sensation would like, feel what that sensation would be. That's crazy.
It heightens your central nervous system. So like you are super focused afterwards.
Interesting. Okay. Well, the last bit of actual baseball I wanted to get to on this podcast was to kind of beat around something I was thinking about today. Potentially the way the Pirates might want to beat the ball around the yard. But Ford, I think their offense can be better than a lot of people think. I know it struggled last year. I probably heard at least once a day that Andy Haynes shouldn't keep his job, or like, Andy Haynes was the one driving this bus and was deciding to, drive it over an embankment or something. I don't understand why.
Well, I want to ask that question because he's a friend of mine. And when I talk about Andy Haynes, it's going to seem biased. For me, any hitting coach that comes in, you need more than a year.
Yeah.
And the fact that he went out, he hit with Hedges and Connor Joe in San Diego. He was hitting with Reynolds 3 days a week.
Yep.
I think that says a lot about who he is. A lot of hitting coaches go out of their way like that. But the one thing for me, Mackey, is like, how do you judge how he's doing when it's not his career? He can only supply the information. So
I guarantee you Andy Haynes is not telling them to like strike out or make outs. I guarantee that's not
100%. 100%. Yeah. And I think I was talking to KY about this, how it'd be nice to have more. I know more coaches may not always be better, but if you could take ego and put it to the side and each guy knew what they were really good at. Some of the best teams right now, one I'm going to use is Atlanta Braves. They have an incredible mix of these old school dudes, old school approach. I know how to get the best out of them in the game. And then they have these new school animals that can just pour in information and somehow decipher it in the right way for each guy. And I think that's the big thing is like, if you can have that balance, and Andy Haynes is known around the league for understanding movements, understanding approach, understanding maybe an attack plan. But I'll tell you right now, I had a lot of hitting coaches. The great ones stand out, but you still have to gain that trust. You have to find that kind of banter. And some of the guys that I worked well with, you'd never even hear their names. They were assistant coach in the cage, but they looked at things differently than the head guy who maybe had way too much on his plate, because he's in the meetings at 12 o'clock, with the front office. And then he has to do the meetings with the scouting report and everything, and then pour it into us and then go to the cages. So it's a lot to handle. So me and KY were talking about what if you could balance it out, but you'd have to make sure that guys understood that, hey, this is no pushback to you. We're all trying to get to the same place. I think that's sometimes a big problem. I don't see it now with the Pirates, but it's definitely been on teams in the past I've been on.
Yeah. So I never agreed with the assertion that like Andy Haynes is the problem. I don't get that. I think it was an unfair situation for him. I mean, I understood why it happened, but like the lockout, you can't talk to your guys the entire season. Then you've basically got 4 weeks to like, we're going to get to know each other face to face. You're going to absolutely trust me. And then we're going to roll into the season and everything's going to be perfect. Okay. Ready, go. Meanwhile, we have a whole bunch of young guys. There's roster turnover. There's this and that. It was just not a situation where, it wasn't really conducive to a team like the Pirates having a lot of success, which they did not.
And they're in a developmental stage. They don't say that enough. These guys are learning on the fly. 900
different players who played games in 22.
Exactly.
But I also look at this fort, and then I'm watching Reynolds hit, and obviously he's looked really, really good. I love the additional weight we've seen on Key Bryant. I think that's going to be good for him. I don't think he's a sub 700 OPS player whatsoever. Neil Cruz is an absolute freak. I think Jack Sawinski can blossom into an everyday player. Look at what they did to address first base. I don't think this is an offense that's going to be like top 10 in the league in scoring runs. I'm also not sure I see it being bottom 10 in the league in scoring runs. Do you think that's too lofty of an expectation?
No, I think high side, it could sneak into the top 10. I really believe that. Yeah. Cause you kind of look at the projections of, if Key Bryant does a tick better, right, it's going to really help out those numbers. But if O'Neal Cruz has a season where he drops 25 or 30, Sawinski could easily do that. McCutchen, his first non-20 home run season was last year. He could easily pop out 20. And you kind of look around that diamond, there's a lot of thunder that could happen, but they also can run. They're very athletic. So maybe there's, like we talked last week, maybe there's some pitches that are elevated because they can only throw over twice. There's some rule changes that play to their favor. And then you look at some of the older guys that get on base, the guys that they signed at first base are known for getting on base, and they're going to get on. And these guys can maybe take a step back and go up and swing at that first pitch. Let that thing eat. Because a lot of times when you go up there, you want to see guys, you want to understand how the ball is moving.
I don't know. I feel like you're going to get benched on the Pirates if you swing at this iteration of the Pirates. You swing at the first pitch. I don't know.
Just don't
They're
miss
like
it.
so patient, OBP heavy. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, but if you balance it out, that's the big thing I've seen that they're trying to do is they had a lot of swing and miss, and now they've added some guys that can really see some pitches that may see 4 or 5 pitches on average in an at bat. That's going to create those longer bats that allows those guys like O'Neal Cruz to let it eat early on, to let Sawinski let it eat early on. These guys need to get their swings off on the best pitch possible and not get down in that count. And that confidence rises. Big things happen. I mean, that's the biggest thing in baseball. If you get confident, like, I don't care if you're the backup or the starter, confidence plays a huge way in this game. So if you can rattle off a great series, it's gonna kind of compound into that next one. It's just the at-bats and who you're facing. And a lot of those guys face some really tough arms immediately when they got to the big leagues, but they fought through it. And I thought that was really cool to see last year.
So what are you telling me with the OBP guys mixed with some of the swing and miss guys? Like, you're going to try to stagger them, and you're saying, like, okay, you have one out. If I'm a hitter, I'm going to be aware of the situation. I can let it eat a little bit, knowing I've got Choi behind me, or I've got Santana behind me, or Connor Joe, or whatever these guys that they brought in that have a high on base percentage and are theoretically going to see pitches. And, like, is that the idea that you can still swing, but you know the guy behind you is going to chew up some pitches and that starter's like pitch count? Is that the idea, or am I missing something?
No, you're absolutely perfect. And we did something really cool last year. We took Chavis and we took Vogelbach. And if you put them together, they're an all-star. And that's kind of what, as a maybe smaller market team, you kind of look at it as like, we're not trying to compete and be Freddie Freeman at first base. Yeah. But if we can get close enough to being above average at first base, O'Neal Cruz is going to be by far the best offensive shortstop in baseball if he does his thing, right? So you make up in different areas. And then you kind of look at that across the board. You know, Brian Reynolds, there's a great chance he's going to be the best offensive player in center field. And you just keep looking around. And if you can start to bridge that gap closer and closer and closer with players that kind of fill the gap that you've needed. And one of the things they needed is they needed guys to get on base more because they hit a lot of homers. You know, last year they hit a ton of homers. So if they're guys on base, instead of that, you know, solo shot, it's a 2-run, it's 3-run. And how many times did we lose because the other team, especially 2 years ago, it was unbelievable how many times we lost because of OPS. We lost because the guys on the other team could get on base one more time and hit a ball at the yard one more time than we did. And that's a very small thing to think about. So if you can just fix that, but then you look at kind of the people they've got on that roster, it's just a very athletic team. So they have a lot of options to try to produce and score runs. And I think their defense is going to be much, much better, which that confidence can sometimes go right into that offense as well.
So what does he do? If you don't answer, I'm going to point to Pete. Are you a big Moneyball guy? Or no? It's okay.
Yeah, I am. It's just, I hate that people are still stuck on it. Oh, they're like the Moneyball. I'm like, yeah, like a decade or so ago, maybe, but yeah, it's completely changed. Yeah. It's a new type of Moneyball.
Yeah, no, it is. And I like the concept. I realize that it's evolved. I'm not propping this up as like the be all end all, but I just like the presentation of the movie. Even if
absolutely.
Like, you know, I'm thinking about the scene, hearing you describe that stuff. You know, it's Billy being in a room with the scouts. You know, which one of these guys do we have that can replace Giambi? None of them. What the are you talking about, man? You know, just the dialogue that is in there is classic stuff. But yeah, so I like.
And I'd like to ask you that. I mean, you're down there. I mean, Sawinski's made some swing adjustments. Kutch made some pretty big swing adjustments. I think too, like there's guys with want to, and you're watching BP, you're watching the live BPs, and I mean, you said Reynolds is swinging the bat good. Usually in spring, he's a slow starter. So kind of give a little bit of update on that stuff too.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's easy to get over infatuated or whatever, get infatuated by watching these guys hitting batting practice or live BP or whatever. But I like Sawinski's swing changes.
Me too.
Being a little bit more upright. He's a little bit more upright, a little more open. And I just, he's been really impressive. I like the maturity in him. This goes beyond his swinging. This is just how he carries himself in general. But He's looked excellent. I honestly, and shame on me for doing this, have not watched a ton of O'Neal Cruz. Maybe that's because I don't need to. I know that he's just going to be O'Neal Cruz, but I have not spent a ton of time around him. The McCutchen stuff is really intriguing. I actually referenced some of what you've been telling me on the Fan today. I did a hit with Filipponi, and I name dropped stuff that Michael McKenry's been talking about the Kutch of old. He goes, "Oh yeah, just name drop Michael McKenry like you're some sort of big deal." I'm like, I mean, this is a great time to pitch the podcast that we do together, and also, yes, he's been talking about this, so I'm going to give him credit. But I like the way Kutch's swing looks. I'm still sort of getting a read on him, like in his movements and stuff. I mean, I don't have that baseline of like, oh, this is how it used to look, because I wasn't around a ton. I mean, my view of Kutch was on TV, but yeah, I mean, I think those are most of my takeaways. I mentioned the thing about Key before. I'm trying to think if I missed it. Oh, you know who's looked really good is G1 Bay. I've written and said this on the air a little bit, but some of the changes he's made, like a lot more top hand, trying to use that more.
But do you know the theory behind the top hand?
No, I don't.
Bottom hand drives and takes you to the dance.
Okay.
This right here brings the thunder and gets you the ladies.
Okay.
That's where the power is, right?
Yeah.
This will take you to the party. This makes you dance.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's an extension through. I mean, if you watch, Mookie Betts and JT Martinez kind of made this go viral a couple of years ago. Just all the feels and the movements they would do on deck, and all the weird gadgets they use in the cage, just to feel that, that feeling of really getting an extension through and get that barrel working through. And one of my favorite things I've ever heard about hitting was Barry Bonds. He used to talk about putting a glove on that top hand and catching it, so he could feel everything so connected. And they said that's why he was so good at like just snapping a ball at the last second, because he was so used to catching that ball deep. So he's thinking about here, but he's really just trying to get that on plane and work it through.
That's funny. I'm such a dork, man. When I was a little kid, I don't know what the top hand, bottom hand makes me think of that, but like I had a tee in my backyard and like a drop, like a net set up, and just during downtime, nobody had to tell me to do it. It's just what I did for fun. I'd go in the backyard and hit off of my tee, top hand, bottom hand, try to like mimic soft toss to myself. Just did it over and over and over again. And that was like, on a summer night, instead of like going somewhere and being cool, I was like, that was my idea of a good time, was to work on top hand, bottom hand. But
I was the same way. The same way. Yeah.
Guess I should have worked on it a little bit more, though. I could be on it.
Should have been catching. That's the problem, Mackey. That's the problem. Should have been catching. Uncle. Come on, coach.
Everybody should be catching. Everybody can.
Everybody's not made for it, but yeah, everybody should.
All right. So who's your give me a breakout guy. Somebody like I'm gonna say Sawinski. I think Sawinski blossoms into a regular. That's gonna be my like guy, really makes some hay this year. Who's your guy?
Oviedo.
Johan Oviedo, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. What makes you say that? I don't question it at all. He's looked really good too.
Well, one, he was sitting down with Rich Hill the other day, and if he's around him, I feel really, really good about it. But just this stuff, it's off the charts. I mean, I compared him to Jack Flaherty last year in their movements and kind of their wind up and everything else. And then I started looking at the stuff, and I'm like, Oviedo's stuff is better analytically. His extension is off the charts, which all that does is create this deception of, instead of 97, 98, it's like 101, 102. And that's what makes guys like Strider off the charts good. They just cannot figure out why they're not hitting it, because it's jumping on them in a different way. Obviously, Strider's barely 6 foot, so him having a 90+ percentile extension makes him remarkable. But I pick Oviedo. I think he's a guy that he's just not getting enough recognition and how good he could be. So if he's, playing the cards right, he got to spend some time with Adam Wainwright. He got to spend some time with Molina. He's really trying to soak it all in, and notice he's the guy that's kind of migrating to the veteran guy that's had a lot of success. So I'm excited to see where that goes.
He's a real good kid too, man. I don't know how much you've dealt with him personally. Oh gosh, he's just a really good person, genuine, caring person. I asked Shelton about him today, and I just pulled up the answer. But really good impression last year. He's got good stuff, big physical presence. It's making sure he continues to harness the ball in the strike zone. Couldn't agree with that more. When he's attacking, when he finds his rhythm, and he's not sort of like screwing around the mound and walking.
And that's gone, right? That's gone. That can't be part of his game anymore. So that's going to be a benefit, I think.
Yeah, and like trust your stuff, dude. Your stuff's good. Put it on the plate. Let's go. You know, and I talked to him earlier in camp actually about that same thing. But it's a really good pitcher. Just trust his stuff, and I'll be curious. I like that pick though. I like that pick a lot.
Well, I'm not gonna lie. Sawinski was my guy. I've been picking him since last year. Yeah, no, it's a great pick because if you just look at his background, go back to our very first conversation, we were talking about Hedges and personality. He's an oddball. Oddballs stand out to me constantly. He's from Chicago. He's the first guy from his little area that's made it to the big leagues. And when he got here, even in the worst time, hitting 180, swinging a miss almost 55% of the time, if not more, he kept a level head. I called him Sunshine remember the Titans?
Looks a little bit like Ronnie Bass.
Right. Yep. And I thought he did a great job of going down, playing around, trying to figure out some things, and then realizing, no. I don't need to change anything. I need to trust who I am and grow. And I think they allowed him to do that, which is going to give that kid so much confidence moving forward because he's been in an uphill battle his entire career. He's always been good, and he's gotten better year after year. And he's a guy that's kind of stood out to me like that. There's a diamond right there that we may have that we don't even realize. So great pick.
He's been spending a lot of time around Brian Reynolds, which I don't think is a bad thing.
No, very good thing.
Unintentional, and I don't think it's a bad thing. Spend as much time as you want around Mr. Reynolds, Mr. Sawinski. I'll be excited to see what the final product is. But
and not to mention, he was really good defensively last year.
He was.
He was our best defensive out.
By the way, he's working in center today.
I kind of wondered. I still think I want to hear your opinion on this because I believe the best outfielder on the team on the Pirates should always play left field.
Because of how funky it is at PNC.
Mm-hmm. And I think it should always be like, I think Kutch is made for PNC's ballpark if you shade him into that gap and you make the guy in left play closer to the line, but you have to make sure those guys play that way because Kutch, he makes gaps look small because he's so good at that gathering, what is it? Track down speed or however you call it. I don't know what they call it, but like, right. He's not as good at attacking the ball.
Closing speed.
Closing speed, yeah, especially in the gaps. So, like, if you kind of look at, how things are drawn up, I think, Sawinski could be the best outfielder on the team, but he should be playing left. So
yeah, it's going to be interesting because you can make a case. I mean, you can make a case that McCutchen, because of how he moves, would be best served in left. I'm not against Reynolds in center. I think Sawinski's been fine in center. In a lot of ways, I like Sawinski's arm in right more so than I do McCutchen's. I don't know if it's that big a deal, to be honest.
I don't either. And I think about Corey Dickerson. They literally said he would. I heard this from a coach. He has a better chance of having an act in the circus than being an everyday outfielder. And he was a Gold Glover. So look, if you can figure out what can work, and what he did was something that he learned from Kiermaier, is get rid of the ball. Yeah. Get rid of the ball, create incredible routes, credible angles, and you'll be just fine. Because he was always fast enough. He just didn't have the route, that most guys had. So he figured that out, and then he got rid of the ball. Ended up having, I don't know, almost a 10 or 11 assists, I believe, when it was a Pirate. It's just outstanding out there. And I was like, man, Dickie, you've just done a tremendous job of putting this together. So. Yeah.
Speaking of doing a tremendous job of putting this together, Fort, you set up the Zoom, or you set up the StreamYard thing. You're working on the graphic for this. It's been a pleasure, my friend. Episode 2 is in the books. I liked episode 2 better than episode 1. We even got it on the first take. No record a podcast. Wait,
no, I forgot to push record.
No, I'm just going out to dinner. Not going to work this time.
It's good.
No, but
you going to Waffle House?
No, I think Pier 22. Our boy Robbie got down here, and Rich Walsh and Craig McConnell from KDK are coercing me to going out tonight. So big wild night in Bradenton. Look out. But in any case, that does it for this episode. If you would like to get involved in our podcast, we are admittedly, I did not have a great week in trying to like grow this and solicit things. So shame on me. Throw an inside fastball at me and buzz my tower. But email either one of us. Mackey at post-gazette.com is where you can find me. You can on Twitter as well at jmackeypg. I'll let Fort give his contact information. But anybody listening to this, again, we would like to make this at some point as we slowly grow it into how we want it to look and sound and be marketed and all that stuff. But use it to get word out and get sponsorships and find a way to turn this podcast into a vehicle for charity. And hopefully this week ahead was a little bit more productive than the week behind. But I do think, and I don't want to speak too much for Fort, but I heard a lot of positive feedback from people about, Pirates fans listening to this podcast. They just started with it. It's a great concept. They're all in favor. So keep listening. We appreciate you listening. And I'll let Fort, you go ahead and handle the sign off, brother.
First off, Mackey, tremendous job. Mackey's the one that's kind of putting together ideas and thoughts of, what we're going to talk about. So he's done a tremendous job. So he can kind of boost me up and give me a high five with maybe some of the tech stuff I'm learning. But yeah, this is a heart song for both of us. We want to give more to the fans, good, bad, or ugly. We want to hear about it. I'm at the Fort McKenry on Twitter and all social medias. And then the Fort McKenry at gmail.com, or you can go now at info@thefortmchenry.com. I just got my website up and live today. So that option as well. And then Mackey, I want to highlight our first charity. Because yesterday I got to speak to a group of youngsters and the entire camp's proceeds went to Maverick's Mission. Okay. And it's a kid that committed suicide and no one saw it coming. And it's hard to believe that you didn't see it coming, but that's life, because this kid was a standout athlete. He's one of the better players. He was joyful. I mean, you could go to the website and read what the parents say about him and what some of his friends and other family members say about him. And that's a reality that we face. I mean, we're facing an epidemic of mental health problems throughout the country. So I wanted to highlight them. I got to do that yesterday. It was something that was really special to me. I'm going to release it here soon, kind of what we talked about, but just having the vulnerability and the courage just to step out in front and say, hey, I'm not okay. And I don't want to stay here. I want to get better. How can I learn? And it all starts with just communication. Someone that's willing to step out in front and say, yeah, I wasn't okay, but look where I'm at now. And I think that's a really, really good thing. So I wanted to highlight that. That's our first, maybe give back, so to speak. But tell the boys hello. Thank you for listening, and I'm excited to see where this goes.
All right. You've been listening to Pitching In.